Welcome back to Yahoo Finance Live. Coronavirus cases are continuing to spike in India, potentially in part due to the rise of a so-called double variant that's already the dominant strain in at least one state there. The variant dubbed B.1.617 includes mutations present in both the strain found in California and South Africa, but more data might be needed to show how that variant is playing a role in India's case count rise. And meantime, back here at home, podcast host Joe Rogan sparked some controversy for his take that he wouldn't recommend that younger, healthier Americans get their vaccine shots. Dr. Fauci was quick to come out against that take. And for more on all things coronavirus here, I want to bring on a doctor who's much more qualified to speak about these things. Dr. Peter Hotez is co-director at the Center for Vaccine Development at Texas Children's Hospital and dean at the National School of Tropical Medicine at Baylor College of Medicine. He joins us now alongside Yahoo Finance's Anjali Kamlani. And doctor, just want to start on the India variant here because the fear has always been, with more cases, you're going to see more variants and more chances for that variant to be potentially more deadly. But what's the difference with the one we're seeing right now in India?
Well, I think, first of all, it's really important to point out that the B.1.1.7 variant from the UK that originally rose in the United Kingdom and the one that's now dominant in many parts of the United States may be still the dominant one in India, and that alone could be causing a lot of the problems. There's no question there is this Maharashtra variant, not only in Maharashtra state where Mumbai is, but elsewhere in India. How much of the rise, the surge in cases is due to B.1.1.7 versus this other unique variant is unclear. The B.1.1.7 variant is often called a single variant because looking at the part of the spike protein called the receptor binding domain that interacts with the host receptor. There's an amino acid substitution there in the B.1.1.7. The reason they call it a double mutant like South Africa or Brazil or this one in India is because there's not only one, but there's two in the receptor binding domain. The truth is there are many more mutations than those two, but that's often colloquially is referred to a double mutant, which has different, slightly different amino acid substitutions from the South Africa or the Brazilian variant.
Dr. Hotez, knowing all of this that is going on right now, and we're watching these concerning spikes, I know that travel hasn't really been an issue just yet, but should there be some restrictions on travel or really just stopping travel altogether from India?
I've never really seen travel bans really make much of an impact. A lot was made about the travel bans from China at the beginning of the United States epidemic. And in fact, while the emphasis was on China, as the virus came in from Southern Europe and caused that devastating outbreak in New York. So I feel more often than not they can be counterproductive. So one would have to be really strategic about how you use a travel ban, since it could be very isolating and may make public health control even more problematic. It also takes time and energy to enforce travel bans, and it's not as straightforward and simple. So I would say I'm not close to it entirely. I just don't think that's, from my point of view, that's not the biggest priority right now.
Meanwhile, we know that the U.S. has been providing aid, the first plane with all of that to land today. And a bunch of the stuff on that plane is stuff that India had asked for, like oxygen supplies and PPE. But one thing in particular struck me, and that was the equipment that has been diverted, supposedly from the U.S.'s ability to produce the AstraZeneca vaccine into India, claiming that it could make 20 million doses. Your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts are, I think it's fine. I think it's certainly helpful, but it's, the reality is it's a drop in the bucket. I mean, if you look at India's population of over 1 billion people, likely you have to immunize 800 to 900 million people to interrupt virus transmission, oftentimes with 2 doses for most of the vaccines. So you're talking upwards of 2 billion doses of vaccines. So 20 million, it's a nice gesture, but I think we need to do a better job helping India. India is arguably the world's largest producer of vaccines through Serum Institute of India, Biological E, Bharat, and there's a few others. We need to ask those producers what they need to make all of the vaccine for India, that all the materials that they need. And one more, because the whole equity plan from the COVAX sharing facility depended heavily on India supplying vaccines for the world. So not only for India, but for Africa and elsewhere in low and middle income countries all over the world. So I think it has to be all hands on deck, and giving the Indian vaccine producers, give them whatever they need.
Well, on that point, you do have the vaccine that you're working on with BioE, and that has also garnered some attention from the U.S. It's now in phase 3 trials. When do you anticipate that it can be out there and on the market and be used and authorized? And is it going to be quick enough to help bring down this current surge?
Well, it's a good question. If all the stars align, the hope would be that, and the phase 3 studies look promising, that it could be released potentially to the Indian people on an emergency use basis by later in the summer. So that's roughly the time frame we're looking at, and then a global plan by later in the summer into the fall. So I know everybody wants that vaccine to get out as soon as possible, and we're working 24/7 to make that happen.
And Doctor, bringing the conversation back to the U.S., it almost feels like the first 50% of the population getting vaccinated was the easy part. Now you've got those who are a lot more skeptical about the effects of the vaccine and the safety of it. And yet today we heard from New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio saying he plans to go to 100%. Opening up the economy by July. Are you comfortable with that decision? In timing-wise, is that the right call?
It may be the right call, but we really have to see how we proceed with vaccination. Remember, the way to look at this is as follows. We have to remember that 20% of the U.S. population is not eligible to get vaccinated by virtue of the fact they're under the age of 12, and we don't have the safety or efficacy data for that. So that, cuts off the top 20%. And that means to interrupt virus transmission, we easily have to get over 70%. So that basically means just about every adult and adolescent, and we have a ways to go. So it may be possible to fully open New York by July 1, but I don't know that yet. So rather than be prescriptive and say we're doing this on July 1, I would have waited a bit and really find documented evidence that we're really seeing steep declines in transmission as we get above 50, 60%, which we might. And then maybe we could do that. I think projecting out to July 1 is still premature.
Well, Doctor, we'd love to get you back on the show as we get closer to that date to get a better sense of how you view where the pandemic stands right now. Dr. Peter Hotez, co-director of the Center for Vaccine Development at Texas Children's Hospital and also National School of Tropical Medicine at Baylor College of Medicine, Dean. And our thanks to Anjali Kamlani as well.